Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Florida Hockey Bros. My name is David. I'm here with my brother on the other side of the screen. And we're talking Panthers, Rangers today, mainly. Maybe some little Maple Leaf stuff in there, sprinkle in there that everyone loves nowadays. But yeah, let's start with the series, Dario. We saw Game 5 last night. The Panthers, once again, maybe not dominated as much the entire game, but it's been kind of a trend now in this series, the way that it's been going, where clearly and everybody says that the Panthers are just the better team. So it is kind of funny to see all these observations after the games from either fans or pundits or whatever that tend to focus so much on what the Rangers are doing wrong. Now, they're saying that like the defense was switched in the Carolina series and now it's just different and all kinds of stuff. So what's your take on all of that? We talked about that a little bit, and every series that the Panthers have gone through is a little different, but it's just it's pretty cool to see like the different fan bases and just the overall look at the teams and how we tend to like hyper focus on our own team. But yeah, I know you got something for our Ranger fans.
Yeah, man. I think I'm just gonna get real about the team. I mean, we're 5 games into the series. It's like fever pitch, tension, and stakes now, like a must-win game for real for the Rangers coming up, and for the Panthers. It's a big game because we lose, you got to go to New York again for Game 7, and there's no guarantee with Shesterkin that you're going to be able to do the same thing that you did yesterday. So, it's chippy, and you kind of follow the commentary. So at this point, you're kind of already having very strong feelings about your opponent, and you kind of feel like you know your opponent better. And, outside of some of the regular radio shows in New York or whatever that cover all kind of sports, I feel like a lot of the fan base, a lot of the conversation about this series and about the Panthers, as I mentioned, I think in the last video we did, is like has been incredibly disrespectful to the Panthers and dismissive and incredibly self-centered, more so than any other team that we faced in the last 3 years in the playoffs by far. And some of it feels like a little bit like trolling. I know some of those shows are just trying to rile people up and trying to be funny, whatever. But the truth is that my response to that, instead of just trolling or whatever, I'm gonna try to come with the receipts, as I like to do. I mentioned in an earlier show, the Rangers were the 21st team in the league at 5-5 this season. Everybody knows that's no secret that they're not great. And I just briefly went back to look at that, and I'm just going to tell you some teams that were in front of them. And I'm going to go from, best to worst. But the Kings were better at 5-5 than they were. Nashville was better than 5-5 they were. Philly was better at 5-5. New Jersey, that didn't make the playoffs, was better. Seattle, Minnesota, the Islanders, Calgary, all these teams were better at 5-5 than the Rangers this year. So you should not be shocked that you are getting like destroyed in this series at 5-5. And I made that video before the series started about the things that people weren't going to pay attention to. Because Shesterkin has been a factor in the series, but Bob to an extent has also kept the Panthers afloat and not allow outside of that one game, not allow, he's not Anderson for, so if Freddie Anderson, he's not going to allow like a bunch of soft goals or whatever. So, you're going to have to work. You're going to have to work at 5-5. And the Panthers have been in the playoffs very disciplined. And so you're not going to get as many power plays. And when you do, we've also been really good in the penalty kill. And I saw somebody yesterday on one of the shows saying, oh, the Panthers are not that can be that good on the penalty kill. I'm like, you have not watched the Panthers at all this season. You have not watched them in the playoffs. The Panthers are excellent in penalty killing. They've been all season. And the only reason maybe they haven't been as high is because they had injuries on defense early on, because Bob is one of those goalies that can have a bad game here or there, and things like that. But in terms of just the eye test and the numbers, the Panthers penalty kill has been elite at its best. And so this idea that we've killed, 30 or 32 or 31 or 33 or whatever, we've had stretches similar to that in the season. And so the fact that you didn't know that's on you. The fact that you didn't know that the penalty kill for the Panthers, we're not going to just give it to you that easily on the power play. Look what we did against Tampa.
Yeah, and the Bruins too. I think we were 14 or 15 penalty kills or something.
Exactly. You haven't been paying attention. And by the way, the Panthers power play, we're almost as good as yours during the season. Go look at the numbers. We were not that far away from how good you guys were on the power play either. And we've been in years past. The last 2 years, our power play has been pretty solid. So, it just kind of dried up in the playoffs, 2 years ago with the that season with Huberdeau and all these people. So anyway, that should not be surprising. The fact that the Panthers forecheck and that your defense looks shaky. We make defenses look shaky. We get turnovers on defense. That's what we do. That's what we specialize on. And the issue is that your defense is not built to sustain that. Your defense is built with younger guys to break the puck out, to try to make a lot of pretty passes, to jump on the offensive. Kender Miller loves to carry the puck. Fox loves to carry the puck in. Trouba pinches in here or there. That's what you have. You have, Gustafsson is very offensive. So you're built that way. And the issue with that is like what's happened to the Leafs and other teams. Like when the forecheck comes in, our forecheck and the Panthers, we're built on that. We're elite. We don't have like elite one-timer shooters. We don't have them Zibanejad or whatever. We don't have Shesterkin. Bob is not as good as Shesterkin in the last few years, but we're solid in most areas. And in some few areas, penalty kill and forecheck, we are the best of the best in the league. That's why the Panthers have, the record that they have. And so it wasn't a big of a difference. It was only 3 points between the Rangers and the Panthers in the regular season. And that's because we had a couple of like chunks where we were just not trying that hard. We were just, trying to wade through the regular season. So all to say that I think you should not be surprised by the way that the series played out. You should feel lucky. It should have been over by now. It should have been over in 5 if you really look at how the games have gone. And you may still pull it out, but even if you did, what I'm saying is still factual and it's still right. And that's hockey. Hockey, the best team doesn't always win. We know that. I mean, we've seen that a ton. But also, like, be real about why these things are happening. Yes, your team has struggled. Yes, you guys have disappeared. But also, you guys have disappeared before. Or, are these guys like the Leafs would have amnesia? Like, you guys were up 2-0 with Tampa 2 years ago and then lost 4 straight. And then you were up 2-0 on the Jersey and then lost in 7 and got destroyed in game 7 4-0. Do you forget about that? The fact that Carolina outplayed you in 5 out of 6 should have been concerning versus just dismissing it. Oh, yeah, we're better and this and that. And we're scoring the power play. It should have concerned you that you were struggling and that your power play started to struggle toward the end and that you almost had to go to game 7 after being up 3-0, if not for the Kreider, and Freddie Anderson allowing those goals. But no, you live in your own fantasy world about your team and you think your team is like great and all that. And your team has some really good pieces. But another thing that I'm going to be real about the Rangers, look, you want the example of what the difference between your team and my team. Look what Zibanejad did when Bennett showed him the elbow, because he didn't even hit him or touch him at the end of the game with that empty net goal. Zibanejad, instead of running him over, which is what you have to do, the guy has the puck, it's an empty net, you have to get that puck back. Either run him over against the board, you don't have to cross-check him, just hit him against the board, pin him against the board, or go after the puck hard with your stick. He's coming behind soft, sees the elbow, and completely fakes it, and gives off some of the play. He stops moving, and Bennett just weaves in and scores. That's the difference between your team and my team. And not only that, Bennett scores and slams Kreider against the wall, and then Tkachuk skates by and touches him, and it's like, what's up? And looks at him. That's the difference between our teams. You know what I'm saying? Our team is trying to win. We're trying to fight. Your team, Zibanejad, you're one of your best players. It's afraid to be in touch. It's a complete ghost. And he got those 2 points yesterday, whatever. Good for him. Like, he's not a factor. He's just not for the type of player you need in the playoffs. And I'm gonna pause and throw it back to you, because I want to talk about some other stuff in the series about 5-on-5. But one thing you've mentioned to me is that Trouba looks like shit out there. Like, he looks bad. He's turnovers, a lot of bad penalties.
Captain of that team,
right? But I'm going to answer that question, because you asked me the other day, how is he the captain of the team? I'm going to tell you why he's the captain of the team. Because look at Kreider, look at Zibanejad, look at Panarin, look at Fox on the ice. In this kind of a physical series, no heart. Kreider is getting owned by Mikkola in front of the net. Like, completely owned. He got slammed against board by Bennett yesterday. Didn't react. He threw the Tkachuk like a little thing in the air. This is Ian Tkachuk making fun of him, saying that's the best move you've made all game. Like Sabania has not. Panarin, he can weave, he can shoot. He's like a Marner. He can burn you here or there. Yesterday,
he reminds me a lot of Huberdeau.
Yeah, Huberdeau. It's like he loses every puck battle on the boards. every single
He
one
doesn't protect the puck, and he makes
at all.
nice passes, but that's
Right.
it. Like that's pretty much all you get.
So when that's and Fox, and then that's the other thing. Everybody's injured supposedly on the defense. Fox is like a ghost of himself. Keandre must be injured. Trouba is not himself, and this everybody's must be injured. You know what's happening to your team, injury or not? You're getting kicked in by a forecheck, and you don't know how to handle it. That is the reality. And it wouldn't be just the Panthers. Any other elite forechecking team will be doing this to you. You got lucky that Carolina doesn't hit. It doesn't truly forecheck. They puck fish and they try to do a lot of pretty passes. And again, the Caps were not a real playoff team at all. I mean, if you faced the Penguins, you would have lost, 2 games in that series. You would have struggled a lot more and had to work a lot harder. So all to say that I'm just tired of this narrative and dismissiveness about the Panthers. And the Panthers are better than you, objectively better. You may have had more points, but that doesn't reflect the quality and depth of the team. And for the playoffs, from a playoff style perspective, they're objectively better. We've outplayed you. The third period, yes, that they show you who wants to win the series. Own you in the third period. You got most of your shots after the empty net, until you empty your net. Before that, you got nothing happening. Complete domination. So anyway, I'm going to finish my rant. Show the image, David, of the 5-on-5 that I share with you. And just a visual. You don't need to read names. You don't need to read numbers. This is 5-on-5 yesterday. Look where the Panthers are, and look your entire team outside of Panarin. And Panarin, because of the assists and because of all the weaving he was doing yesterday. But most of you guys are below 50% of 5-on-5. Like the entire team. That's not like one or two guys, not half and half. Like Laviolette was saying, it was a close game. Chances were both ways. Like, get out of here. Like, he's just trying to save his ass. Like, that's 5-on-5. The numbers don't lie. Complete domination. And most of that was in the third period. In the first two periods, you looked a little bit better and you had a little bit more control in the offensive zone. And you got some penalties go your way, but it wasn't that big of a disparity. And how many chances did we have by in front of the net? I can count Stanley, who almost put it between Shesterkin's legs by himself. Lusty and Lundell, with the chipping between the legs by themselves in front. Reinhardt had a shot by himself in front that Shesterkin had to save. And Bennett hit the post by himself in front. We had a ton of...
Kulikov hit the post as well.
Kulikov hit the post in front by himself as well. Like, we had a ton of chances yesterday, in addition to the goals and all that. So anyway, I'm just tired. You can take the image off if you want. Like, I'm just tired, man. Like, of this narrative and all of that. Like, anybody watching the game who's in neutral can tell, like, right now, it should have been over in 5. And you can talk about injuries to your defense. You can talk about the ref. I mean, this is even sadder than the Bruins to complain about the refs, because at least the Bruins might have a case with the punch in the face, maybe a goal interference over here. Some of those calls were 50-50. Some of it were missed.
The Bruins played us really tight.
I think it goes both ways with the Bruins, but that series had more nastiness to it. This series, the refs have nothing to do with the series at all. And to say that it's the refs, or to say that you have injuries on defense, or to say that, just this one guy has disappeared, or, whatever, like Trouba's your captain. Like, that, come on, like, get serious. Like, yeah, he's he's known as one of the dirtiest guys in the league. That's why he's your captain. You pick the dirtiest guy you have and you made him your captain. It's like us making Sam Bennett the captain. Like, there's like about 7 other guys that probably get the captaincy before he did in the Panthers. So anyway, I'm just tired of the bullshit, bro. I don't know whatever is going to happen the rest of the series. I don't really care. There's no way you can tell me the Rangers are going to win the cup. I mean, if that happens, it's just the hockey gods, like, just saying, hey, here's a joke for everybody. But there's just I've not seen teams like this. This reminds me of Montreal when they made the Magic run and then lost to Tampa, or the Islanders when they got to the conference finals and lost. Like, that's kind of what the Rangers feel like. They should not have gotten through Carolina. So anyway,
no,
done, man.
No, we can start there, actually. Yeah, they should have lost to Carolina and get 6 games. Carolina had that game too, and the same thing that happened to the Panthers happened to them. One of those OT goals, I think, and the Rangers just kind of stole that game, which is what they do, right? They take advantage of their few chances. They're all very high quality. Sometimes Bob had that terrible game, that 5-goal game where, he allowed like 4 goals that were not, quality or high danger chances. But that's it, man. I think beyond that, I just think the main difference, besides what you already pointed out, and the effort there at the end with Zibanejad, it's more of our style of play allows Bob to play a bit more relaxed, and you just need him to give you 900, 890 save percentage with our defense because we're going to limit shots. And if you're holding teams to 20 shots a game, it doesn't matter if you score 2 or 3 goals as long as we can match that output. So it's just one of those matchup things, I think. I thought it would be a bit easier for the Panthers. Honestly, I thought we would win in 5 or 6 once I saw the first game and just the trend of the Rangers just not attacking. Even yesterday, they gave you like a good 40 minutes of, good play and more. They were more in the Panthers defensive zone, but nothing really came out of it. If you remember Bob's saves, there was nothing spectacular. Maybe 1 or 2 high-end saves, but yeah, man, I just think it's just perspective, but it's also it's just as a fan, sometimes you get excited or whatever. We did it during the President's Trophy season, and I think we just learned from that. The problem with New York fans or whatever is they're just not gonna learn, because once you get to a certain level, and it's probably gonna happen to us with the Panthers when we keep going to the playoffs every year, the expectation is just there, and you just think that your franchise or your team is great. And that's why you're winning or losing, right? If we lose, we're going to say the Panthers are not scoring. So I get that, but yeah, man.
No, but there's a difference between thinking your team is great. The Rangers are a playoff team. The Rangers are a top 5 team in the East, in terms of their offensive output, their power play ability. They have some names, they have some defensemen that can play. And, Shesterkin is elite. Like, are they objectively better than the Bruins? Probably, but in a 7-game series in the playoffs, when it gets tough, the Bruins could take them out. Carolina could take them out. I think Carolina this year was slightly better than the Rangers, just that, from a matchup perspective, it didn't go their way, but it could have gone their way. And the margins are close. The same thing could have happened with the Panthers. Marie said we swept Carolina last year, could just as easily been swept in all of those games, because those games could have gone either way. And that's just reality. Right. And so, but that's the objective perception you need to have about your team. That's why you need a coach who understands that, or a fan base that it's a little bit more educated. And again, we're fans, we're emotional. You always want to win. You always want to take out the other guys. You want to put them down. You want, mock or whatever. But when we're having these conversations with an audience, or we're trying to break down a game or whatever we do this for, even if it's entertainment, if you want to troll a bit, it's okay to have a joke here or there. But you also, if you're a fan of the sport, I don't know. I'm a believer that I want to do this too, in part because I want to talk about the sport and I want to understand more about the teams. In some ways, I've actually gained more respect for other teams in doing these conversations and shows and looking at the games in a different way and looking at the numbers and learning about the game, because you realize how hard it is. You realize the different styles. You realize how it can just really go either way. I mean, that Bruins series was super tough for the Panthers, and we didn't play our best in some of those games. And those 2 games in the game 3 and 4 in Boston, we were great. But then outside of that, the last 2, we weren't as good. And you just think about the matchups, you think about the Leafs and why they struggle and all that stuff. And then you got to give the Leafs props for putting up a fight against the Bruins, for a little while before the end. And so, because they play defensive hockey, which they have to do in the playoffs. And when I look at the Rangers fans and how they dismiss Florida, how they just dismiss other teams and other players, and and they say, "Oh, we're gonna beat them," and that just, again, it gets to a level of dumb where that's not the narrative I see from other franchises or from other fan bases about, oh, we lost this, but book it, we're gonna score 5 on them, and we're gonna bring it back and all that. I'm like, you just have a little bit more nuance than that. You can still be funny and troll and whatever, but be real about what you're watching, be real about your team. And when you're disrespecting the other fan base or the other team that much, you haven't really watched them and you don't know what you're watching, you just sound like a dumbass. You just sound like you really haven't watched anything outside of your own team, and you lived in your own bubble and you didn't really look at your own team. You won so many 1-goal games at home. That eventually is going to break. That eventually is not a sustainable model. Much like the Panthers run last year was magical, because they shouldn't have won the cup. I mean, to be real, that team, half of it was HL players and all players. That would have been incredibly insane for the Panthers to win the cup. That would have been more unexpected than St. Louis. So yeah, I think I'm disappointed, but I am also understanding that the Panthers were not as good as Vegas, and eventually, and we were probably not as good as Carolina, and we probably, name wise, not as good as the Leafs, but of course, certain things can carry you through. And the core that we have is a really excellent playoff core. And Tkachuk had a bad game yesterday. I mean, all that stuff, but you have other guys now that are starting to really take over. Forsley, Lundell, Bennett had a hell of a game. He was the best player on the ice. And so you just need that depth where you have those kinds of results. And Shesterkin is the one keeping them alive. I mean, it just is. If they had a shakier goalie, we would have been the one scoring 4 or 5 goals a game for sure, given the amount of chances. We did against Tampa because Vasi, just for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And the defense there was a little bit shakier. The Tampa plays a lot looser, a lot more open. And we just did have some goals kind of go in the Tampa series.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said when both the Bruins series and this one, the other goaltender has been way better than Bob, and you're still deserving to win most of those games. Especially in this series, Panthers should have been over in 5, if anything. But I think it's encouraging to see the Panthers be able to win these games and the series the way that they are. Because when you look a little bit ahead, if you get to the finals, which you still got to get through New York, but if you get there, you're talking about Skinner and Ottinger, who's great, but I don't think he's at the level of Shesterkin or even Swayman. I think he's just a notch below, and he's shown
he's a lot more wild.
Yeah, he's shown that he can be beaten. So that to me, that's what's interesting. And like the reason why it's kind of annoying is just like, I get it. Whenever a team gets eliminated, you're gonna talk about what they did wrong, all those things. But when you look at the series against Boston and this one, the only takeaway from anyone should be, wow, the Panthers just dominated them. Even if we lost, games in overtime or they were really tight, it was just on paper, it was just total domination. To go through Vasilevsky, Swayman, and now Shesterkin, like, to me, that's what's impressive. That should be the talk of the East. It's how the Panthers went from last year to this year. Even the intro before the game on ESPN was like all about MSG and playing there and all those things, which is fine. But if you want other franchises to also gain popularity outside of the home markets, you have to market, Tkachuk a little more, not just a post-game interview or maybe, just kind of talk about what Barkov has been doing. Things of that nature that just kind of brings attention to other teams, and then other fan bases can learn about them. Just like you learn about the history of the Rangers, they won in '94 and all that stuff. Like, you learn that through this series. If you're not old enough to have been, I mean, I was a child, so I don't think we were even in this country. So I had no idea what happened in '94. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to be ignorant and sit here and be like, oh yeah, New York just sucks. We owned them, but whatever.
No, and I think that, to me, the point is, the more you appreciate and understand the game, actually you can heighten up the rivalries and get yourself psyched up to face a team. I also think the fact that we're facing these elite goalies says a lot about our team. And if we do make it through and win, like, you've earned it, and it prepares the young core to face guys in the future and not be frustrated by an elite goalie, which is what happens to a lot of teams. That happened to the Leafs last year when Bob was super hot and was playing elite level. They opened it up and they started to give up a lot of offense. So the Panthers, that we were not a great offensive team, but in some of those games we had the better chances. And after the first 2 games in Toronto, I think we actually evened that series out in terms of the play and the shots and goal and the chances. And I think part of it was they just started to get desperate. And one thing we have is, win or lose, we're not going to necessarily change our style. Now, our periods can fluctuate. I mean, no team is perfect. I mean, unless you're like,
our second periods are usually,
unless you're like one of those Detroit teams or whatever, like, or maybe Chicago at its best, like, you might run over everybody. But yeah. And the other thing, what we were saying about the shots on goal, which is a great point about Bob, like, when you're allowing 20 shots on goal, you can allow 2 or 3 and his numbers are not going to be elite, but you still are in the game with those numbers, which is kind of what happened yesterday. It's like, yeah, you were the better team for the first 40 minutes and you only had 17 shots on goal, which is not a lot. It's like what, not 9.5 or 8.5, whatever shots per.
Yeah, and you score on a mistake, that.
And you score on a like with, and Bob biting on the move. And I think to me, that's the thing. Like, you still got a shot 37-27 yesterday, and supposedly you were the better team for 40 minutes. Like, that should tell you that you're in trouble. Like, if that's your best, and to say, oh, and that's the other thing. They're saying, no, we've played 20 minutes and now we play 40 minutes and, we're going to play 60 minutes the next time. And I'm like, yo, you do know who you're playing, right? You think the Panthers are just going to let you dominate them for 60 minutes at home? Like, that ain't going to happen in the playoffs. Because even if you take a lead, that's when we are our best. I told you yesterday, we needed a punch. We needed to give up. We always start a little bit slow, keep it tight. But then once that goal gets scored, guess what? We start to wake up. And so, yeah, you may take a lead or whatever, but that's only going to bring there's no way you're going to dominate the Panthers. Either the Panthers are going to take a lead and they're going to make you work really hard to tie the game, or you're going to take the lead and you're going to get hemmed in your zone, and that's okay. But you should be ready to play that. You should be ready to wade through those moments. Your team hasn't been able to do that, and stay composed and stuff like that, and not make mistakes. I mean, the Forsling, it was a breakdown between Fox and Lafreniere yesterday that let Forsling just kind of walk in, and then the screens by Tarasenko and Lusty on the Lundell shot was a great rush. We had 2 great rushes in the game, and we had a bunch of other open chances. Most of the open chances I mentioned earlier came off turnovers on the forecheck. The puck trying to come out the wall. We get it, shoot it in. Your defense is trying to, cheat and come out. And you're leaving the guy in front. And we had like 5 or 6 of those. And, again, between Shesterkin and maybe poor shot choice. Or you were fortunate. And Barkov almost scored 2 on a shot that Shesterkin stopped, but the rebound was right there.
Yeah, I'll say on the defensive thing for the Rangers, there are some screenshots out there on Twitter that show, not necessarily in the goals, but just in random plays. It shows Miller and some of the defensemen very high up the blue line and sort of all looking at each other, including one of the forwards. One of the plays, it was basically both defensemen were by the blue line. Barkov was on the boards with a player, and then a forward was down low with Reinhart. That was one of those chances. But all 3 guys at the blue line were looking at each other, looking away, not sure what to do. So I do think that maybe something was switched, or maybe it's just the pairings. I don't know. But
I think more than that. To me, I call it cheating. I think it's a matter of maybe they're asked to play man on man and they're just following the forward all the way up the wall, which the Panthers kind of do a little bit of that because the Panthers do play more of a man on man defensive style. At some point, you have to rotate off, obviously. I'm talking more about when you have the puck. When your defenseman has the puck behind the net and they try to get it out and they can't get it out, when that puck gets intercepted, your defenseman not only has made the pass, this reminds me of Riley, Morgan Riley with the Leafs. They'll get the pass up and immediately go because they're used to breaking out. They're so used to the breakout. In the regular season, it's easy to do. No one's forechecking you the hard game in game. There's a lot more space in the neutral zone. The Panthers are elite with the neutral zone defense. So you're basically trying to break out. And when that pass goes, you're cheating. That's what I call cheating. You got to wait for that puck to come out before you abandon your defensive post. But Miller and Fox and a lot of these guys have a tendency, because that's the way that they have played. That's how they've generated a lot of the offense outside of the power play. And now that puck comes back in because we are sealing the walls, because we're forechecking hard or stealing it from behind you. And then when that puck comes down low, the defenseman's not there. And that, to me, feels like a big gap. So it isn't just the guys going up. I mean, that might be part of the rotation and the way that they're playing the one-on-one. And maybe it is not the best style for the personnel, because you also have to understand your personnel. But to me, more than that, what I've noticed is that they are doing a little bit of that cheating, trying to come out of the zone, which the Bruins were not doing. The Bruins made that adjustment. Last year, the Bruins did, and we burned them. This year, they knew. Jim Montgomery knew. So they stay tight. I mean, that defense for the Bruins was tight, man. It was hard to break through that.
It was hard for us to get shots and to generate offense. That's the main difference between that, last series and this one, even though this one has proven to be tougher earlier on.
I mean, tougher
Well, just because we've
Or
lost
because you're sturking.
with
Yeah,
mistakes and stuff like
and
that.
also like it's hockey, bro. Like some of the chances could have gone our way. Some of the shots, some of the posts, not going in. Sturking being in the right place, the puck bouncing the other way. Tips. Yesterday there was a tip by Reinhardt that was great. Like just didn't bounce the right way. Stuff like that can happen too. A guy can get hot in the game and a bunch of put a bunch of goals up top or whatever. Like that hockey has also happened. But I don't know that it's been tight. It hasn't felt as tight. It's felt tight in the scoring. It has not felt tight in the style. With Bruins, it felt tight in the actual game.
Yeah,
the back
every
and
game was
forth.
very tight.
Yesterday we were not great for the first 40 minutes, and we still ended up with 37 shots. And there were some good quality chances there. So anyway, I just feel like we'll see what happens in the next game. We have the way that I look at it, the Panthers have 2 more chances to close this out. And, the Rangers are the ones who have the pressure to win 2 in a row again. And they got lucky the way that they won the 2 in a row in the series. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm hoping the Panthers come with the mentality like, let's just close this out at home, not have to travel again and have a week off before the finals. And, the other series is going to go 6 or 7. So it's not like the difference in dress is going to be that big. And yeah, man. Anyway, it's all about, I think you mentioned stuff about the names, just going by the names or whatever versus actually understanding your team and having to promote your players. That might be a good segue to talk a little bit about the Leafs because I want to talk about, a trade that somebody mentioned for Marner and also the conversation around what defenseman the Leafs should get because it's been hilarious to follow the early conversations.
Yeah. Let's get into that. I think that's going to be the most interesting part of the offseason. What the Leafs do. They're always in the spotlight. And also, like, looking at all the free agents out there. Obviously, Reinhardt is number 1 right now, free agency. So, curious to see from a Panthers perspective what we actually offer him versus what he might get. But, he's not going to have a ton of suitors either because he's going to want to go to a contender. But anyway, yeah, let's get into the Leafs, man. What's the trade that you're talking about? I know I've seen, like, they want to get Montour or whatever, Pesce.
No, those are not trades. There was one, I forget the name of the guy. And again, these are, like I'm not saying, these are reports, but there was a guy trying to be a little more confident. I don't know whether he knows anything or whether he's just throwing out a scenario. But it sounded like a possibility that Marner could go to Vegas and sort of laughing about the idea that Vegas was, of course, go after Marner. But, the way Vegas lost this year, I would not be surprised that they would try to make another big move. That's just how
they're losing Marshall. So
they're losing Marshall, and they're going to lose Stevenson most likely as well. And I think they're also losing Alec Martinez. So yeah, they're going to lose some people. And so a trade that was proposed that I'm actually intrigued by is Marner for Karlsson and Shea Theodore. The money supposedly works for both sides, and the Vegas can replace, losing Marchessault, losing Stevenson with a guy of high caliber offensive forward like Marner, and they just signed Hanifin. They could try to bring some other defensemen in, and Theodore, who's I think a veteran, with Karlsson, who's kind of a good middle 6 player, could address some of their issues there. And I know Stevenson's also a guy in free agency that they've talked about. The Leafs have talked about looking at. I actually think should be a guy that they can look at. So, if you end up with Steven and Karlsson, who are champions, and you bring Shea Theodore in and then sign another, and maybe in that case you don't go, maybe you still go after Montour or Pesce, but you go, I know they talk about Tanev. We'll talk about that. Yeah, if you trade for a guy like that and you have Riley and you get another couple of free agents, and then some of the, if you bring back Edmondson and you have Benoit and all that, maybe your defensive core starts to look a little bit more solid. And then if you have Stevenson or Karlsson, you have more depth, and the conversation is, do you want the star forward versus 2 or 3 really good forwards in your top 6? So anyway, that was an intriguing idea because I think it could work for both teams. And it wouldn't be the worst thing to get back from Marner at this point for the Leafs, because I think the Leafs are in a win now mode. So if you can get Theodore and Karlsson versus like picks, I would probably do that. So anyway, I don't know. I saw it and I was like, oh, I can see that working for both sides. I don't know.
Yeah, because I feel like the Leafs just really need to strengthen, a couple of their lines, and they'll move on from Tavares after this year, which they can. And yeah, for me with the Leafs, it's more about getting the right players. And then what style you're going to play with Berube now? You're going to be more defensive. I know he wants a 200-foot game from everyone. Good luck with that. That's not like, even if those guys adjust to your style, the Nylanders and Tavares, that's very like demanding. So I'm it's super curious to see what they're going to do. I do think Treliving is okay. He's going to get some good guys. They're definitely not going to super like overpay, I don't think. But I guess the most hilarious thing would be Marner coming back. People were talking about maybe trading him to Pittsburgh. It makes no sense because I'm pretty sure Dubas was going to trade him last offseason before his no trade kicked in. And yeah, man, like I said, that's going to be the story of the offseason. I'm also curious with like Olmark, where he's going to go, what Tampa is going to do, if anything else. Free agency starts on July 1st, right? Yeah. So that's going to be kind of interesting. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of changes. A lot of teams are kind of being forced to move on from players. Carolina's going through it now. Tampa kind of went through it and still kind of going through it. Boston, the Bruins definitely need to make some decisions to see what they can get. And the Panthers as well. I mean, we have one more year with the score, minus Reinhart and Montour if they decide to leave. So that's going to be interesting to see what they do. I highly doubt the Panthers are going to let Reinhart walk, but yeah, let's see how it goes, man. Yeah,
and I think a trade like that, when you break it down, Shea Theodore is only 28, is on the last year over $5.2 million contract. That's Brody money. Like, you replace Brody with Shea Theodore, I think that's an improvement right away. And then Carlson, I think, plays center. Or can play center, and he scored 30 goals this season. He scored 40 in the past. He's up and down on the scoring, but he's a good scorer. He was like, and he has 100 games played in the playoffs, and it's got like 30 goals in those games. And, and it's like a plus, that stood out to me in the playoffs was like, he's a plus 40 in the playoffs. So he's a good two-way player. So to me, that if the money works, like, that would be a trade that I would absolutely look at. And then you still have money to either bring back one of Domi or Bertuzzi. You can bring Stevenson in maybe, or decide to go after a Montour or Pesce. I mean, that, Pesce, Theodore, O'Reilly, Edmondson and Benoit should be like bottom pairing guys. You just got to plug in one more defenseman in there. And all of a sudden you might have like a pretty solid thing. And again, with guys like Carlson, Stevenson, a Bertuzzi or Domi in there, I would actually go with Bertuzzi, but he might be asking for money. Plus your forwards, making all the two forwards, and then Tavares plugging him in, and there's someone maybe you can move into the wing if you've got Carlson coming in. So anyway, that to me feels very intriguing. I just made a video saying that they shouldn't necessarily get rid of Marner. My main point there is like, Tavares' money is going to come off next year. Marner is a very great player, and he may not want to move. Well, so that would be the question. I mean, if he's willing to do it, and then that's what you're getting back. I said there are too many pieces that have to fit, but if that's the trade, then I probably would be like, you know what? Maybe this is the chance we have to make that big move, and Tavares' money still comes off, so we'll have flexibility.
Yeah, I think if Marner's good with it, which if he's okay with a trade, that would be a destination that I would choose. So I think that trade would definitely work. And then just maybe go for Montour. I think the biggest question is like how they're going to make all the money work. And I know once you get rid of Marner, okay, you're bringing in those two guys, which is about the same money maybe, but then you still got to resign Theodore if that's his last year.
And their goalie situation is tough.
And they need a goalie because like they're probably in like a worse situation because they know they have a good goalie in the works with Wall, but you don't know like if he gets injured, what do you do? You know what I mean? You need a good backup, either that or maybe get an actual starter for a couple of years, a Saros or whatever. Markstrom is still out there, I think. So I think the money's what's going to really handcuff them, because if you're going to be forced to play Nick Robertson, Dewar, if you resign him, and what's the guy that they extended, McMahon, like if you have to play these guys, Instant Count, the second coming of Christ, Minton. Like if you're forced to play those guys because you just went out there and got a goalie and a top defenseman and you're maxed out on money, then that could be an issue for them in the depth scoring wise, and especially if they keep Marner. They keep Marner, then you can't really get anyone. That's going to be super tricky. I think they do have to, in a way, explore that Marner trade as much as possible.
And the other thing I saw that I wanted to mention is like I saw another show, because I mentioned McKee has said this in the Keeper on Board show, and now I saw another show saying that they would take Tanev over Montour, or and this speaks to the disconnect outside of the bubble for some of these conversations. They said that they would take Tanev right now over Montour or Pesce. Again, Tanev's going to be 35, injury prone. We just saw it. Yes, he plays hard. He blocks shots. In a top team at this time and this age, he's a bottom pair defenseman, or should be. And again, he fits with Dallas very specifically with that team, but Dallas is starting to show cracks on defense. To take him over somebody like Montour and the value that he can bring and the age difference, and same with Pesce and all that, it just speaks to like the name recognition obsession over there, that they just haven't thought about Pesce as much. He's not a big name that gets mentioned among the top elite defensemen. Montour had a breakout year last year, but before then was considered a journeyman. And they're not really looking at objectively at the player and what the value is and what they bring. The other thing that they mentioned that I found hilarious is like, oh, maybe the money's too much for Montour. Maybe he'll want $6 million. And I'm like, if you think it's $6 million
he'll stay with the Panthers for 6 million.
Like Cito will sign him for $6 million in Florida.
No, I think he wants like 8. He wants
and I'm not saying he's worth 8 either. I think Montour for the Panthers should be in the 6.5 to 7 at most. I think in Toronto he would be in that close to Morgan Riley range, 7 to 7.5. It's what I would look at. But that's the value. I mean, that's just what the skill set. He's very athletic. He's strong. He's a right-hander shot guy. He runs your power play. He's solid, somewhat solid, better than Riley, I would argue, defensively. He's physical, not afraid to think. He's a big player performer. He shows up. I mean, even this season, he had a down year because of the injury. I mean, it really sort of had to do with that. But even in the playoffs, he's had 9 points in 16 games. Like he's still producing. He's still running that power play. And he's a guy that you notice just how much he can skate, So
yeah, he's a very fast skater. He moves like a winger, and
with his athleticism, he can give you 5 really good years.
Yeah, he has really good puck handling. He's not gonna cost you games. And
he's gonna be a guy that has short-term memory. You're losing, and he's gonna come back and try to score that goal.
Yeah, I don't know. He's a really solid player. Power play one.
And he's a charismatic guy. He's good for the bench. He's a good leader. He's vocal. He's always chirping with guys on the ice. Like he's just a guy that, again, if you're not overpaying for him, but anyway, just again the disconnect to think that Montour's only worth 6. I'm like, you don't.
No, he's worth more than he's worth more than Zadorov, and Zadorov is probably gonna get 5 to 6, depending on the term.
Which is overpaying for him, but yeah.
Yeah, and Montour's gonna get 7. I'm sure that's what he wants. We'll see what he wants.
But I'm hoping they go with Tanev. I'm hoping that they get Tanev for 2 to 3 years. I'm hoping that's what Trey Living does, is like, let me get Tanev, and I don't know if a Marner trade will happen. I just don't see Marner saying, yeah, trade me. I just don't see it. Maybe I don't know. We'll see.
I think if you're Marner, you say, no, I want to win here. We have a window. If you want to let me go, then you can let me go and walk for free, and I'll choose what team I want to sign with. I think that's how he's going to look at it. Any other, if you respect the player, like Cito says, you have to respect the player to a certain extent. And it's just business. And plus, it's just team construction. We talk about that all the time. It's not about getting the one guy. Oh, let's get Tanev. Let's get Montour. You know what I mean? It's how do they fit? Okay, Montour is your power play quarterback. He's a solid top 4 guy. Could be in your top pairing easily. Great. To me, that's a great pickup. $7 million, that's what a top defenseman is going to cost you nowadays. And he's still, he's barely 30. So he can still give you another 4 or 5 years. So you're just not going to do like max contracts with him. But that's what you got to look for, is how do those guys fit? Because you got Bertuzzi and Domi for a reason, to give you some grit or whatever. But they didn't. And on top of that, no one else on the team did. And it's like Reeves, who's playing, by the way, you see Rampy played 2 minutes last night.
Oh my God, I didn't even talk about Rampy, bro. Like, I am so, like, it is, anyway, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Less than 3 minutes, like some fans were like, you have to play
there was
people.
a guy, like a radio saying, like, and everybody was agreeing with him, like, oh, Rampy coming in, look, in the first game, like, Kachuk was afraid of him on the ice, and like, you know, this and that, and I'm like, though, do you know how sad it sounds that, and again, I'm nothing against the kid. Like, he's a huge kid, and, you know, it's fun, and Rampy, Empire State Building, whatever the hell they're saying. Like, it's all funny. Like, but in the playoffs, in a series like this, in the conference finals, if you think that guy's the difference, your team, it just immediately tells you what you think about your own team and how much in trouble you are. Because he can't be out there, man.
I just like your top line.
Is that Ryan Reeves thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Your top line cannot be. What was it yesterday? It was Zibanejad.
Yeah, Prater, Zibanejad, Cheeto.
Hiddle came in. Yeah,
they had Kako the game before.
Yeah, you can't. We tried that last year. We had like Colin White on like our second line or our top line for like half the season. Bro. Because it was in our second line the whole playoffs. You're not gonna win like that. You might get there with some lucky bounces and Shesterkin, but there's no way that your top line is that. And there's no cohesion there. The best two players are Panarin and Trocheck, in my opinion. And Trocheck's been playing well, but he's just scoring basically. And Panarin is just, like we talked about, disappearing. But yeah, I saw the Rampy thing, and I was just talking about this, and I thought that was funny that he played 2 minutes, and his last shift was halfway through the second period or something like that.
Yeah, it just
like look at our fourth line. Maurice threw him out there with like 6 minutes left, and we were up 1.
I mean, I was going
to tell you, because they match up. I think Lavalette match up their second line. Yeah, I think it was Panarin and Trocheck was out there with our fourth line, because they were kind of looking for those mismatches. But Maurice wasn't scared of that. So
no, he was trying to give a rest to the top 3 lines. So he in the third period, he tends to only shift that line like 3 times, and he kind of times it. The last 4 or 5 minutes, they're not playing.
Yeah, the last like 3 minutes, the top line is out there like 7 times.
So anyway, man, we'll see what happens. I'm gonna save
5 minutes real quick. Let's do a little bit of Oilers and Dallas. I know I haven't watched every game, every period, but I have watched. I want to say half the series, at least like 2 periods every game, and then I just go to bed or whatever. But have you seen anything there that jumps at you or?
Well, 2 quick things. One is that, and some other people have mentioned this. I think Saravalli mentioned this. Like, there's absolutely no chippiness in that series. It's so weird. It's like the regular season series from a physical perspective, and especially Dallas. Because I just think that the Oilers are hitting. The Oilers, especially the last game, the Oilers played, in my mind, their best game after they allowed those 2 goals that I've seen them played in the playoffs in a long time. They played solid defensively, physical. They forechecked. They defended. They were responsible. They waited for the chances. They doubled the hits, and it looked like it against the Stars. Robertson got destroyed like 3 times. There's just no response from Dallas. I think Dallas is just not built to be tough at all. And now without Tanev, if he's not playing, that's going to be tricky.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to have some rookie that's never played.
They're vulnerable. I think Dallas is. Same as Oilers. I mean, Oilers can become a mess on defense. That's the thing about the Oilers. The Oilers just have to play structure. They have to play patience. They have to play playoff style, not play so wild and under control. But the main thing stood out is that there's not a lot of like chippiness or, after whistle stuff and response from either team physically, even though the Oilers are a lot more physical and bigger, or at least more physical. I shouldn't just say bigger. And then the other thing is that I think both teams are vulnerable in different ways. I think that they go through stretches where like they're really, really bad on defense, and they give up a lot of stuff. They overdo it on offense. They turn it over a lot. There's a lot of giveaways in that series. Look at the giveaway numbers per game. And,
yeah.
It's like pretty high. So it's kind of more of a wild. I mean, they have the skill, So I wonder if it is the Panthers against either one of those teams, how the most structure for checking style is going to match up against, either Dallas or
Yeah, I guess their offense can always overpower in a way because Bobrovsky isn't going to shut them down. So like I'll be more scared of Dallas because I know where the Oilers' offense is going to come from. It's either going to be the power play or just McDavid doing something. So as long as you put Markov and Reinhardt on like McDavid every single shift as much as you can at home, because you would have home ice advantage. I would just do that and just let it ride. I think with Dallas, I'd be more scared of their offense because their offense is a bit more organized and high end, like top three lines. But yeah, I noticed the one thing I noticed is the Oilers are, when they're playing really, really well, they look amazing. They look like a great team. They play well on defense. They just haven't really done that for 60 minutes all the time, at least on that end, which you kind of need. Even if your offense is not clicking, you still want to play that defensive game. And the games have been kind of lopsided, which tells you that it's sort of like a momentum thing. So it might be more of a mental battle between those two teams and then whoever they get in the finals. But if it's the Panthers, I think that's just not, I don't know. I think we match up well against the Oilers or even Dallas.
Yeah, because Dallas turns it over quite a bit too, I think, and they're also not very physical. They're a lot less physical. The Oilers can match us up a little bit more physically and get into it with us. They have some big guys back there, but I think Dallas just doesn't play physical. And if we played a forechecking style, I mean, the thing with Dallas, you can fall into the trap, of an open game. But if you forecheck against them and you have to play a little bit more defensively in that counter that we like to do in that forecheck style, I do think we match up well. And Dallas struggled with the Kraken last year. People forget 7 games in round 2 because the Kraken played pure forechecking. And it took them to 7 games. And some of those games, the Kraken beat them bad. And again, Dallas is more experienced, a little bit deeper.
They're still young.
There's still, it's a balance between the veterans and the young guys. And some of the veterans have been to the finals. So they kind of.
Yeah, Sagan and Ben.
And Ben is like one of those other dirty guys out there. Like that would be the guy that I would target to try to get suspended. But
you try to instigate a little bit. We've been good at that. Look at that penalty from Mikkola, that goalie interference. Just you give him a little shove and you move on, and you have a 5-on-3 with over a minute left. And instead, like 3 guys just try to ram him down and push him on the board.
Yeah, it's fake tough. It's fake tough.
It's like why, man? Why?
Fake tough is the worst. So anyway, I'm intrigued. I'm going to follow the Oilers in Dallas. I think it could go either way at this point, given how the teams have looked. And for me, if I had to choose, the Oilers, I think, will be better for us because, like you said, where the offense comes from, and they have a tendency to be a lot more disorganized on defense.
And you probably see Skinner.
Yeah,
so
but
the games get kind of crazy and back and forth.
But Dallas is a better team, I think. But if they are going to miss Tanev or whatever, that would be interesting. And I do think we match up well against Dallas. That series will go deep, but I think that unlike Vegas, we wouldn't have to worry much about our physical endurance in the series. Is what I would say with Dallas.
Yeah, we
the ones imposing.
Exactly. I think
physicality.
Once the Tampa was kind of soft, surprisingly soft, but the Bruins were very tough. They were very physical. Those games were a lot of hits. So now going into New York, and then if we happen to get to the finals,
not that physical either. Like
if we happen to get to
that many hits yesterday.
To the finals, we would be the big team, the strong team, the dominant team. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. We'll catch you guys next week, most likely right before the finals. Everything's going to be defined in the next
we'll do a preview.
So next Friday, we'll try to do a long preview on the finals and how we think it's going to play out. Look at all those numbers and all that stuff that we did with New York. All right, guys, don't forget to subscribe if you like the content. Give us any questions or comments below on the video. And thank you for watching. Peace.